Thank you very much. My name is Matt, and I'm one of the operations managers here at Naturetrek. I manage a wide range of tours, all the way from Southeast Asia up to North America, and a fair few places in between as well. And for the purpose of tonight, I will be talking mostly on Shetland, a place very close to my heart. Probably one of my most favourite places in Europe, maybe the world, who knows? But it's a place very close to my heart. So I manage the tours here. There are 3 tours that currently operate on Shetland. There's a general tour, natural history tour called Shetland's Wildlife. We then have a seabird and cetaceans tour, which occurs in July. Then we have an autumn bird migration tour, which occurs usually around September and October. But for the purpose of this evening, it will mostly be our tours in May and June, the Shetland Wildlife Tour. And this is our standard outline itinerary for these tours. It departs Aberdeen on day 1 and arrives back in Aberdeen on the final day. And in between, we have 3 nights on mainland Shetland before traversing northwards up to Unst and Fetler, where we have 3 nights on the UK's most northern island. So during this time, we get to see many corners of the archipelago and the many wildlife highlights that come with it. So where is Shetland? There it is, quite a long way north above the UK, but roughly on the same latitude as Oslo. So it's rather distinct. A distinct avifauna compared to the rest of the UK that we are used to down here. So the main points that I'm going to talk about this evening are arid here, so Sunburt in the south. We're then going to move up to the island of Mousa and the Isle of Nos before heading northwards up to Fetler and eventually on to the island of Unst. But as I said, in between, we get to visit West Mainland and all the other key sites in between. So it really is a fantastic tour. And it's not just the wildlife either. We get to see many of the archaeological sites that are famous on Shetland, not just UK famous, but world famous. So this is the ancient settlement of Jarlshof. I hope I've said that correctly. So we get to spend a bit of time here, mainly because it's only a few minutes walk from our hotel, which I shall show you shortly. And we also get to see one of the many brochs which are scattered amongst the archipelago as well. And this is a very well-defined broch just on the outskirts of Lerwick. And I say we get to see many of the fantastic scenes here around the islands. This is on the west coast of mainland. This is the Eade Cliffs, fantastic geological site. And on a lovely clear sunny day, you really appreciate the waves battering the cliffs there. And there's always fulmars knocking about and plenty of other bird life as well. In southwest mainland, we also get to go and walk across the Tombolo, a quite distinct, unique geological feature, and this links mainland to St Ninian's Isle. And on occasions, we do also get to walk up to the chapel at the very top of St Ninian's, if we're feeling fit enough, that is, or if the wind isn't too strong, maybe. And of course, just the general scenery around Shetland is absolutely stunning. It really is, especially on a crisp, clear day such as this. And of course, there's always a Shetland pony not too far away as well. Okay, so before I commence, I'm just going to briefly go through the species that we're most likely to see on our tours. So this is a black guillemot, mostly occurring in autumn and winter plumage, this is. And then, of course, we get to see it in its finery spring and summer plumage as well. The common eider, a very common species around the shores, and you can get some exceptional views such as this. And the beautiful red-throated diver is another classic species that we encounter on our spring tours. And these are very common on the lochs and lochans, and you can get some exceptional views such as this, a truly stunning and iconic bird, I feel, of Shetland. The merlin, the UK's smallest bird of prey. This is actually the commonest bird of prey on Shetland, and that's basically because there are no large prey items on the island for the larger birds of prey like hen harriers and short-eared owls. So the merlins take advantage of the high density of meadow pipits that breed here. So they do exceptionally well on the island. And you're never too far away from a curlew either. And especially in the spring and summer, the sound of the curlew just resonates across the island. It really is a spectacular scene. Usually at midnight, there is still a bit of light. And all you can hear are the curlews and the golden plovers just whistling and wailing in the gentle breeze. It really is absolutely superb. And of course, last but not least, is the Shetland wren. They do like their own wren, and it's quite distinctly different from the race here on mainland UK. It's slightly larger, slightly longer tailed, a different shade of brown, and it also sounds different as well. And it really is just a delightful little bird, which usually breeds in the dry stone walls which crisscross the entire island. And of course, we're never too far away from the otters either. You do have to be a bit lucky to see them, but if you give it time and perseverance, then there's a great opportunity to encounter the otter. There's a very high density, especially on Unst, so we do stand a very good chance on our tours to see this delightful mammal. Okay, so I'm just going to start off now at Sumber Head. So on our Shetland Wildlife Tour, we get to spend 3 nights down at Sumber. And this is our hotel, the Sumber Hotel, very conveniently placed next to the ancient settlement of Jarshoff, just off to the left there, just creeping into the image. And we're only a few minutes away from one of Shetland's most famous seabird colonies. And mostly here are the puffins. But as I say, it's not too far away from the hotel. There it is, just on the red arrow, and there's me taking a photo from Sumber Head itself. So it's a fantastic location, and so a pre-breakfast excursion can take you to one of Shetland's most famous seabird colonies. And this is what we're really here for. Are the puffins. So Sumber Head, extremely famous for puffins, and that's because the cliffs here are not sheer vertical, they're slightly diagonal in formation, which means the puffins have a nice landing pad for when they come back to their burrows. And you can get exceptional views as well as they run up to inspect you at very close range. So fantastic opportunity to get that wonderful crisp image of a puffin. And if you're lucky, the seas here are very expansive, so a decent scan may well reveal a pod of orca. Now, in recent years, orcas have become more and more regular around Shetland waters, and they always show exceptionally well, and that is because they feed on grey and common seals, which are always around the shoreline. So they're always seen inspecting the coastline as they navigate their way around the archipelago. But I've been there 12 times, and this autumn was the first time I have seen them. So you do have to be lucky, but if you go there, you do stand a chance of having a quite memorable and magnificent encounter of a pod of orca. Although I can't exactly say the best time of year to see an orca. You may have that question for me later, but they really are quite random in their occurrence. But I would say high summer and start of October is usually a good time to encounter them. Okay, so next up is the Isle of Noss. So the previous years, we actually used to land on the Isle of Noss, and this photo is taken from the Isle of Bresse, which is just opposite Shetland's capital of Lerwick. So Noss is the most extreme point of land there, and say we used to land on there and circumnavigate the island on foot. Nowadays, we actually take a vessel from Lerwick and venture onto up to Noss from below, and this gives a fantastic view of the cliffs from below. So you get to see the gannets and the auks leaping off the cliffs in their hundreds of thousands. This is one of the largest seabird colonies on Shetland and possibly in the North Sea. It really is a spectacular seabird colony. And so once we've had the thrill of witnessing all the gannets and auks leaping off the cliff, we then go off venturing for the feeding flocks. So these are guillemots, a few bridled guillemots in there as well. The bottom right bird is a bridled. So we get to see these at extremely close range. And we also get to see the fantastic colonies of gannets, which are away from their nest sites and just sitting down on the rocks below the main colony. It really is a true wildlife, a fantastic wildlife moment, and it's not just the birds. On the way back to shore, we actually set up underwater cameras on the vessel, which means you get to see what's happening below the surface of the water, and there are often a few surprises in store there. The boat trip also, you'll get fantastic views of Arctic terns, which is what this chap is, Arctic skua, and probably the meanest of all, the great skewer, or what the locals call the bonksy. Okay, so next up is probably one of the most famous UK ornithological moments possible, at least in my eyes, and that is a visit onto the island of Mousa, and most in particular is to visit the Broch on Mousa. So this is quite atypical from a standard Naturetrek itinerary. It's a very late night, so we sail from Sandwich, which is on mainland, from 10:30 at night, and we sail a 10-minute journey onto Mousa, and we walk up to this Broch. And so this is to witness one of the grandest ornithological moments in the UK calendar. So just a few facts on Mousa Broch before I continue. So it's thought to have been constructed in 300 BC and stands a whopping 13 meters tall, which is quite unbelievable, the fact that it's still standing. But it's one of over 120 brochs on Shetland, but comprising this 120 are some that no longer really exist. They've just been demolished by the wind and the local weather, but Mousa Broch is still standing very strong indeed. So brochs are thought to have been made refuge for communities and their livestock for protection from the elements of the weather, and the Broch now is the nesting site for many pairs of European storm petrels, roughly around 400 pairs, whilst the island of Mousa, which in honesty isn't that big at all, has around 11,000 breeding pairs of European storm petrel. This is Europe's smallest seabird. And so what we do when we get on the island, we walk directly up to the Broch and we wait for darkness. So during the day, the European storm petrels are out at sea feeding, and they only come in when it's dark, and that is to avoid the predators such as the skewers and the gulls. So they arrive after dark and they are greeted by us standing at the bottom and gawping up, waiting for these bat-like creatures to come circling around the top of the Broch, and slowly but surely they come down to eye level, and eventually, if we're really lucky, they can land at our feet. So this is a moment from a few years ago that I had. This is unbelievably a rare European storm petrel at our feet. So quite a moment for everyone, and quite honestly, a wow moment, if there ever was one. Absolutely superb. Okay, sadly, I can't go on about that. So we're slowly moving north up to the island of Fetler. This is a beautiful island, a population of only around 60 inhabitants, extremely remote. It's quite a largest island as well. And it's referred to as the Garden of Shetland due to its lush and fertile landscape. But most importantly, it supports 90% of the UK breeding population of red-necked phalaropes, a completely beautiful bird, which I'll show you a photo of very shortly. But on Fetler, it's all about the waders in my eyes. This is the classic scene where you have the waders on the fence post, red shank on fence post, golden plover, curlew, just a fantastic noise of an aura. It really is a stunning place. Overhead, common snipes are displaying, so the constant sound of drumming common snipes is just endless on Fetler. And then if you're really lucky, well, not really lucky, you should see them on our tours, we get to see the redneck phalaropes. Now this is a photo I took a couple of years ago, and I know it's quite awful, but occasionally, especially this year, we had some exceptional views. So here we go. This is a female redneck phalarope from the island of Fetler. Now, what is most extraordinary about this species is that it's only recently been discovered that the breeding population on Shetland winters somehow on the eastern side of the Pacific Ocean, so just over Colombia. And it's quite amazing that they return to this tiny island off the northeast coast of Shetland. Admittedly, they can land on the water, so it's not as difficult for them, but it's still a mighty journey for such a bird that if you were to hold out your hand, it would fit quite conveniently on your hand. So a remarkable journey for a remarkably beautiful and diminutive bird. It's also very good for cetaceans off Fetler. There's plenty of sea to scan, and harbour porpoise, not only off Fetler, is quite a common occurrence around the archipelago. And you can also see Risso's dolphin off here as well, which I did a few years ago. But the waters here are becoming more and more active in terms of cetacean species. So good chance you'll see a minke whale, late October humpback whales. It's also very good for white-beaked dolphin nowadays as well. So there's plenty of options for you for sure. Okay, last but not least, the beautiful island of Unst, UK's most northern island. So as you crisscross your way up to the most northern point, you drive past the most northern fuel station, the most northern house, most northern post office. You can tick all these things off as you slowly head north. But this is the scenery on Unst. It really is a beautiful, beautiful place. These wonderful rows, which head into the land. And as you can see, it's a fantastic location for spotting otters. They love these margins, which are uniform with their plumage. We also get to visit and stand on the Shetland Viking longboat for those that are interested, but it's also a very good spot if you're botanically minded for rare plants. So on Shetland, there are 4 species of orchid. This is the lesser twayblade. If you hold out your little finger, it's roughly the size of that. So it's a very small orchid, but well worth seeing if you're into your plants. This is the heath-spotted orchid. And as you can see from here, stuff on Shetland doesn't really grow very tall. Yeah, and I often advise people to, in fact, take a magnifying glass onto Shetland if you are into your rare plants. So these orchids are 2 of 4. The others are frog orchid and northern marsh orchid. Moonwort, if you like that sort of thing, there we go. It's absolutely tiny. That is as tall as that one grew, and it's roughly around 3 or 4 centimeters. And then the endemic Shetland mouse eel, Edmonton's chickweed, is another specialty on Unst. And on Unst is the only site where you can find this tiny, tiny flower, but all very pretty nonetheless. We then take a visit up to Hermanus National Nature Reserve. So it's roughly a 45-minute walk, not too strenuous. Half of it's on boardwalk, half of it's across the moors. You just got to watch out for the bonksies, so make sure you take a hat and maybe a walking pole, something like that. But then when you get to the top, you stand above this fantastic colony of gannets. It really is a spectacular sight. So off to the top right, that is Muckleflugger Lighthouse, the most northern point in the UK. And all that white on the left of the image, that is either gannet or gannet guano. So there are plenty of gannets in this area. And this short video, I hope it plays, will just give you an understanding of the sheer density of gannets up here. Okay, just a short video. You may have noticed a couple of puffins off to the right there, but so that is a fantastic sight. The video, I'm afraid, doesn't do it much justice, but there we go. But if you do want to see more puffins, then this is the place for it, because there are around 23,000 breeding pairs of puffin at Hermanus National Nature Reserve, and they show exceptionally well as well. So if you want that mint image of a puffin, this is the place to come to.